So as I mentioned last time, we're doing positive psychology this month, and we are going to get, and in your classroom, in your Blackboard, you're going to see the theories and Martin Seligman and father of positive psychology and all of that. But I need to kind of explain to you why we're not happy, or why we have pain and suffering, in order to understand the polarity, which is positive or the happy. So I started on Tuesday explaining to you the element and learning how to listen symbolically. Today I'm going to continue that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a strategy that I use with clients, my fairy tale strategy. I'm going to go through the chakras, explain to you the 4 needs. For those of you who just started with me, I speak of everybody having 4 needs. So safety, protection, validation, and love. I'm going to link those to the chakras, to the elements, also to illness. For those of you who took health psychology, you already know the illness piece. I'm going to kind of give you a tidbit. I want you to start listening symbolically, and then I'm going to give you the fairy tale assignment. Then I want to talk to you, because we just started briefly last week, on the victim, rescuer, perpetrator triangle, but I want to turn it upside on its head, relate it back to what we did last month about wrong alliance with the parent and the mistress, and this time we're going to use the language victim, rescuer, perpetrator, and integrate the rescuer. So we have a lot to cover. I just want to make sure you could see the board. If at any point you can't see the board, Sam is in the classroom. If you could write in the chat, but sometimes, you know, I'm teaching, I don't see the chat, just text her and I'll move the computer so that you could get the full board. But as of now, I guess, morning. As of now, I think everyone can see the board. So any questions about listening symbolically? And today we're going to go more into depth. Also, tonight is my debunking spirituality lecture. For the students at Kaiser, you can come for free. So I need you to text me or group chat me or email me so I can send you the link. It's at 7 p.m. I think it would really help your studies, and it'll help you understand my theories and where I took metaphysical and spiritual law and where all of this comes from. And then I just added the sort of psychological component to it to bring it to the material world. But I think each of you would benefit. So being Kaiser students, you all can come for free. If you want to invite someone, it's only $20. And I just posted in the group chat if you want to come, and I need your email, and then I'll email you the link. Okay? So that's what we're doing today. So I want to start with what we left off on the other day, which is listening symbolically. Okay? So here I have the chakras. So again, all of the chakras don't have the same triangle. I'm just using the element of the triangle just for simplicity's sakes, okay? I told you that some are up, some are down, some are together, but we're not going into that. So what I wanted to do was, and it was interesting because Sam and I were in the break room this morning, we were talking to someone, and I'm like, oh, he's speaking from this chakra, oh, he's speaking from this need, oh, he's speaking from this element. And I want you to start thinking that way, because it's just going to open up your mind so differently when someone tells you a story. So this morning I had a client. She wanted 30 minutes quick, in and out. And I immediately saw she was leaving out the Zeus-Athena myth. She wants to have a child. I see that she's unable to have a child because obviously the man that has to live up to her partner is her father Zeus. And so we have to dethrone the father, which I'm going to talk about in Mulan in the 6th chakra. So she definitely has a 6th chakra issue going on. And in a matter of minutes, I was able to bring it down to her birth and conception story and see the whole thing. Yes, part of this is psychic, but most of it is symbolic living and symbolic understanding and symbolic listening. Okay, so all of these pieces start to work together. So I'm present with my client. I'm not in trance or anything. I'm getting imagery and psychic imagery, but I'm also very present with you and knowing what you're saying and your story. So that's the place I want to get all of you. Okay, so what I did was I created here a really sort of rough sketch of the chakras. There's 7. Just to reiterate, if anyone wasn't here, I think Anna Barbara wasn't here, and Anna Barbara watched the video from last Tuesday. The word chakra in Sanskrit means wheel, and we have 7 of them, important, up and down. And that's symbolic, which is what I have going on here, is once we kind of get to the transcendence or the 7th chakra, then we go all the way back down again. It comes around, and our entire life is a cycle. Everything in life is just a cycle. In alchemy, we call it, the lead to the gold. So we're becoming this god, okay? We missed the mark and we're on our way to becoming the sun in astrology, but we were born in the earth. And all of our cycles around the sun are just 1 year closer to the end of life, and you're working on the same thread over and over and over again. Okay, so when you hear a client, you're picking apart the 1 or 2 threads that they come to work on, and that's what they come forever. You see it in the astrology chart as Saturn or the sun, which is alchemy, whether you use chakras, which is more Hinduism and Ayurveda and yoga, it doesn't matter. I'm going to tie in the fairy tale, I'm going to tie in the unmet needs, I'm going to tie in tonight the spirituality. It's all the same thing. I took all of this and found my own language that works for me and my clients. And I want you guys in your practice, of course, you can borrow anything that's already been written, but if you want to rephrase it into words that make sense for you, go ahead. That's what religion did, okay? So I'm putting it out there so that you guys can break it down regardless of the language that you like to use. So just to recap, first chakra element is earth. Second is water, so the earth is symbolic of the square. Anytime someone speaks very square, or you hear like square language, a square peg, people that use these words, that's an element of earth. That's a first chakra issue, okay? The crescent moon I mentioned was the water and the maternal, and we're going to talk today about Wendy and Peter Pan. Then 3, 4, 5, 6 all have triangle. Triangle is the element of fire, which is the third chakra. All of these do at some capacity have some transformation and what we call transmutation in spirituality. The fourth chakra is where am I? Air, the element of air. The fifth chakra is the throat chakra, which is the Akash, and I'm actually going to explain all that tonight, the different elements and what they mean in terms of spiritual law. The sixth chakra is kind of a combination of all of them, and then the 7th is also a combination, but it's what we call transmuted or transcendent from the form. Okay, so just a recap. So today I want to talk to you about the fairy tales. So I had a client the other day and we were doing her chart, and she asked me a question, and I said, what fairy tale do you most resonate with? And she's like, Snow White. And of course, her issue was innocence. Now, what's the flip side of innocence? What did I tell you the other day when someone speaks from innocence or Snow White? What's the flip side? What happened to them very early on, probably?
Their innocence was taken from them.
The innocence what?
Was taken from them.
The innocence was taken from them. In this person's case, her parents got divorced before she was a year old. She had to grow up quickly, okay? So what I've done was, using my 0 to 100 and 48 to 52 model, I've put one fairy tale. You could put your own. You can ask your client, what fairy tale do you think most represents to you? Like I asked this client. It could be a story from the Bible. It can be a story from the Quran. It could be a story from Jewish mysticism. It could be, I have a book that's called Rejected Princesses that one of my clients sent me. It could be from that. It could be from movies. Remember, the monomyth, like Joseph Campbell said, is a cycle of the same story over and over, the hero's journey coming back home. That's what the chakras represent. Here, all the way up, we leave home, and then guess what? We come right back home. And this is the cycle. And you'll see tonight, this is the cycle of the human being. This is the cycle of nature. This is the cycle of the universe when we go up the 7 planes and come back incarnation, if you believe in reincarnation. So this law of 7 is repeated over and over and over again. That's why if you've ever heard 7 is a spiritual number, that's in part why, and I'll go more in depth tonight. So I picked stories that I thought correlated with each of the chakras. You can pick your own. If you don't resonate and you want Mulan to be in the second, that's up to you. I'm telling you the ones that I felt fit the framework, okay? So first, let me reiterate, and I know Anna Barbara's new, 0 to 100 are the two extremes. This does come from a spiritual law, okay? So law of the pendulum, we swing 0 to 100, and then we achieve balance in the 48 to 52. What did I tell you the other day? In universal theory, there is only one disease, one illness, imbalance, okay? Even though every body part and every organ can have an illness, and we're going to talk about the illness today associated with the needs, associated with the chakras, associated with the fairy tales, okay? So we're going to tie it all together. So everybody lives in a 0 to 100. When there's an imbalance, please do not get me wrong. Every single person does not have every single problem. That is not the way it is. A person that has every single problem can't carry that in a lifetime. That's the beauty of astrology. In astrology, I can see the oppositions and the squares, which are the imbalances, and that's what I focus on with the client. I don't focus on sextiles and trines because those are positives. There's no need. You already have those tools in your toolbox. Call it that you worked through it in another life. You're lucky. God gave them to you. God-given gifts. I don't worry about those. We are listening for imbalance. We are listening for crisis. We're listening for problems. That's why someone comes to you. Yes, you're going to sprinkle in, oh yeah, you've got, XYZ strength or courage or wisdom or whatever to build empathy and create a safe space. But that's not what you're focusing on in therapy. You've got to pull the Band-Aid. You've got to shatter that snow globe to help the client grow, okay? So not every person has every problem. They might at a moment speak from the 4th chakra just in one moment, of course. Nobody's perfectly balanced all the time. But the theme that repeats over and over and over, that's what I want you to listen for. So just be very clear. It's not like everybody has all 7 that no one can carry that amount of load. Some people I see do carry quite a bit in a lifetime, and some people come with an easier lifetime. Who knows why? That's what the soul picked according to spiritual literature. That's for you to decide. But nobody has every single issue. They would not be able. It would be too much. Okay. So the 0 to 100, the problem behavior. If they're saying, I need validation, validate me, validate me, validate me, or I'm so great, I'm so great, I'm so great. So someone who needs validating all the time is 0. Someone who validates themselves and saying, I'm so great all the time is 100. That's imbalance. That's imbalance. That's okay.
So they're still at 50 or?
No, there's still a 0 to 100. There is a spiritual law we'll talk about tonight, the pendulum, the polarity, the law of rhythm, where we go back and forth. So usually that's exactly what will happen. They'll be very inflated or they'll be very diminished. You may never see the diminished part because that person won't allow you in, but guarantee that they're suffering in silence even if they're not showing you. So if you're at work and there's someone with a super inflated ego, they're at home crying at night. That's just the way it is. So that's spiritual law, and we'll talk about more of that tonight. The balance, what I call the 48 to 52, it's also known as equanimity. It's balance, the Tao, the way, all the spiritual traditions talk about it. This is called self-mastery. You become a master of self at that level, at that chakra, and that issue when you achieve 48 to 52. Now, I am a believer. This is my belief because I'm an astrologer, that people that have squares and oppositions, those are the hard aspects, and we'll go deeper into that as we do more astrology, those people never really fully achieve 48 to 52. They reach it at glimpses, and I told you, like me, I have a 3rd chakra issue. I feel right now I'm just at that 48 to 52. Funny, I turned 48 on Sunday. So I'm like right there, but in any minute, I'm going to be out of balance again, and I'm going to have to work that again. That's my belief. So that's the alchemy. So that person, even though they're a little better, they're working at a little better consciousness, they're still always going to have that thread, versus trines and sextiles, which is what I call the collaborative voice. Those are psychological organs that talk to one another that don't cause problems. And you really are kind of balanced in that, or you know how to navigate that. The competitive voice, or the perfect older sister, as I call it, are two psychological organs that are opposing or in square. Those are what we call hard aspects. And I'm a believer that that collaborative voice doesn't cause any problems, and you achieve somewhat balance. But the competitive voice, really, your lifetime is about reaching that midpoint over and over and over, which is the cycle of the chakras, the seasons, the planets, whatever theory you believe. Okay, so that's a big premise. So we try to get the client to achieve 48 to 52. We give them homeworks, whatever we do in therapy. Okay, so these fairy tales are built on this. Now, you know I have my Band-Aid theory. So my Band-Aid theory is AID, the Band-Aid for the wound. Okay, so how do you heal a wound is through the Band-Aid. A for awareness. I told you most people come to therapy, they become aware of their problem, they're abandoned, they're this, they're that, and they leave. We don't want to leave it there. That's why my book is Beyond Self-Awareness. I is integration. This is part integration, and it's also part hashtag do it different, which is the D part of the Band-Aid. The I is the integration that I told you last month with the wrong alliance, the mistress, and integrating the mistress is what you and your partner, if you're in a relationship, need. Another way to say that is the victim, rescuer, perpetrator, but I'm going to turn it on its head today, and I'm going to show you the victim perpetrator model and how to rescue yourself. We're going to put the rescuer at the top of the triangle. Okay, so that's another way to integrate. In all hopes, 48 to 52 is how you do it different. So what I did was I took the 0 to 100 in a fairy tale, and I found the character in the fairy tale that most resembles the 48 to 52. These are not exactitudes. These are my theories, how I kind of see it play out. And of course, you could put whatever story, whatever movie you like to fit in the place. So innocence is the issue in the first chakra. The person had to grow up, earth, square, adulting way too fast, or like me, I didn't want to grow up at all. I told you the other day I had a client who would suck her thumb in her 20s. She was getting married and she was sucking her thumb the day of her wedding. So that's a problem with the first chakra. Okay, so we overcompensate. And she happened to be a really good moneymaker, but she was also very heavy, like stocky. Not like fat. This girl was strong and solid. She had a lot of earth element in her. Because when you lack an element in your psyche, oftentimes we overcompensate physically, and I'll get to the illnesses that we might manifest in the 0 to 100 as a result. Okay? So I use the story of Snow White. Snow White, the epitome of innocence, so much so that the dwarves say to her, don't open the door. She sees this ugly, wicked witch. She still opens the door. She still eats the apple. I mean, the innocence is just spewing out there, right? The opposite character, the 100, is the wicked witch, okay? She's totally evil. None of us are super innocent, which is part of the innocent strategy. That was my thing. I want to be good. I watched Hallmark. I referenced Christmas movies. I wanted to only live in the light because I was not going to embrace my dark. And as a result, I didn't embrace my adult. And I lived as a child till I got cancer. Okay, so you're going to see it play out in different ways. People that don't want to embrace their dark have this. They're first chakra people. You're dark and you're light. Get over it. Move on. We all miss the mark, okay? We all have a dark wolf living in us. Again, which one do you feed, like the story says? I put the dwarves at the 48 to 52. I thought symbolically it was interesting because they're short. So it's not short or tall, but somewhat in the middle. And what do they sing when they're in the cave? Whistle while you work. Dun, 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 dun. whistling is play, child, and working is adult. I mean, Walt Disney was an absolute genius. And I don't know if you guys have ever listened to my podcast, but on my first episode of Mistress of the, I channeled Walt Disney that morning. And he says to me, and I say this in the podcast, we do the same work. You study myth and I study myth. He just obviously made an empire from it. But all he did was take fairy tales that were very, very dark and gloomy and made them for kids. But the music that they wrote was superb. These people are absolute mythologists. I mean, they know what they're talking about. So the messages are in the movie if you listen, okay? So it's like whistle while you work. The 48 to 52 is the midpoint, like I told you the other day, of creative play or bringing some child to the adult and bringing some adult to the child. Okay, so the whistle while you work I thought was a perfect symbolism for that. So if someone like my client says, Snow White's the story I most resonate with, and you can have a list of fairy tales, or you can just let them answer the question, what fairy tale do you most resonate with, or what movie? If you know the movie, then you can do the same thing. So there's ways to skin this cat. Any questions on the earth element? The other thing I want to talk to you about, which I think is interesting, you may not know this in symbology, caves represent darkness. Caves represent a process of going into the dark to integrate our shadow aspects. We do this in shamanism, in what we call the direction of the West. So the fact that they go underground to take out the diamond is exactly a metaphor. You have to go to the darkest parts of you and integrate to get your diamond. And Jung said, or Campbell said, the cave you fear to enter holds your gold. So this person is having difficulty integrating their shadow. Most of us do. It's the mother or the father that you kicked out, or the dismembered parts of you of Olympus you kicked out that your partner recognizes, or the mistress, however you want to call it, okay? Second chakra, I told you, had to do with the moon, okay? Primarily the crescent moon or the waxing moon, which is like an immature mother. I chose Peter Pan. If you ever saw the story of Peter Pan, Wendy is like the adult. She's the older sister to the little kids. Her parents are fleeting in the movie. They're going out to dinner, and then Peter Pan. Peter Pan is the 100 because he's very childlike, okay? So she's like the mother, and what does Peter Pan want? A mother. And who represents his mother in the movie?
Peter Pan?
Yeah, symbolically.
Remember those so long ago.
Tinkerbell.
Really?
Yes. Tinkerbell, she's the one with the dust. She's the one that goes to the island with the boys that never want to grow up. There's also a chief, and I struggled if I should put the chief, but no. It's Tinkerbell. Because Tinkerbell is the feminine figure, but she's a bitch. Tinkerbell's a bitch to Wendy. I don't know if you noticed. She's jealous. She's conniving. She tries to trick her.
Yeah, where she does the little...
Yeah. So she's the 48 to 52. And I've always said that women have a chasm between mother and woman. And so she's nurturing and loving to Peter Pan, but she's a bitch, as many women are to other women, to Wendy. So I thought she was the 48 to 52. The other thing, and I see this a lot in practice, is women that won't let their daughters take the spotlight, and they want to hog all the attention. That was my mother. And so as a result, I said, oh, well, my mother's the pretty one, she's the skinny one, she's the classy one. So I was like, okay. There's a scene where Tinkerbell is trying to pass through a shelf or something, and she goes like this. She's mad at her hips being wide, and she can't get through. And you see the vanity and the feminine there.
That's funny.
Okay, so a lot of times, like is my struggle, my mother was more woman than mother. So that's a big theme you find in the second chakra. This is not only women. Please, men and women both have a feminine or an anima, but these are the themes that you're going to hear come up. I also wrote Pinocchio as an alternate because Pinocchio wanted to be a real boy, and he was a wood, and Geppetto wanted a real boy, and I thought that that might resemble a little bit. And when he goes to the island, becomes a donkey. It's kind of like a midpoint, but I just threw it out there as an option. I really like the Peter Pan one.
Goes to the island because of donkey. I don't remember kids.
Okay, so you have to watch these, or not, but.
All of them.
Third chakra. Third chakra has to do with the fire element. The fire is the solar energy. The fire is the self-worth. In yoga or chakra language, Sanskrit language, the third chakra is called the Manipura chakra, and it's yellow. And Manipura means crown of jewels. You are the only king in your kingdom, or the queen in your kingdom. There cannot be another in your third chakra. And I told you that the third and the fourth sort of have a lot of workings together, as similarly 1 and 2. So this morning when we were talking to somebody at work, I said, oh, he has first and second chakras. And you're often going to see that. That's why I said there's a couple of threads, but they're not all 7 threads, because the person wouldn't be able to handle their psyche in the month. Okay? So I put Cinderella, because Cinderella actually was the queen of the castle. Her father owned that castle, but the stepmother was the evil, wicked stepmother. And so I put the fairy godmother as the midpoint, the 48 to 52. And I'm going to tell you why. What is the fairy godmother's role in Cinderella?
She helps Cinderella out.
Okay, and what does she give her?
She gives her the dress.
The dress, the shoes,
the carriage.
the carriage. And what does she tell her?
Oh shit, I remember.
She says at midnight, the pumpkin goes back to being a pumpkin. That is such an important lesson for the third chakra. Yes, you have gifts. Yes, God-given fairy godmother, God loved you and gave you gifts. You're special. But girlfriend, you have a limitation. And you need to check that. That's my issue. I call it Jafar and my Aladdin. That's the story that I use. But Cinderella, when I thought of the fairy godmother, I'm like, yeah, she's guidance, like I have spirit, right? We all have some angel or something that we call, but there's limitations. Everything has limitations in the finite world, in the physical world. So this idea that you could do it all, that you're everything, I hate that. Oh, I could do it all. My mom told me. Check yourself, people. There's limitations in the physical world. Like that's like just basic law. Okay, so maybe in the spirit world, in the higher planes, you're unlimited resources, but down here, everything is finite. So that's a very, very, very important lesson in the third chakra, that yes, you have gifts and you are powerful, but you too have a limitation. And any chakra that's too big, just like any chakra that's too shrunken, is not good. That's a 0 to 100. So the fairy godmother to me represented, I have a power, but I have a limited power. Okay, so it teaches you to kind of check yourself. Now, just a little sort of yoga, Sanskrit, Hindu education. In the chakra system, if you've ever seen the caduceus, okay, you've seen that? Okay, the caduceus is symbolic of the doctor, the medical field. Do you know that it has absolutely nothing to do with the medical field? Those 2 serpents in my drawer are called the Ida and the Pingala.
Like
they have to do, no, not swine. They're 2 serpents, and they have to do with Ida and Pingala energy, that those crisscross in your energy body. And when they're crisscrossed, there's a chakra. And the wings are the wings of Mercury, which is the communicator of the gods. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that tonight. And where we get all of our spiritual teachings from is Mercury. So this is actually a symbol of the energy body. In the original, I think it's German story of Cinderella, the stepsisters were named Ida and Pingala because Cinderella was the center. They were the sisters that surrounded her. And in the original story, she would sit by the fire waiting for the sisters. So the element of fire. I'm telling you, these fairy tales, especially the original ones, like I said, Walt Disney made it more childlike, but the information is there. And they really know their stuff. It's absolutely beautiful. Really scary. Hashtag no news stories, people. I was interviewed for that podcast, and the lady asked me for 3 nuggets that I wanted to tell the audience. So I said, don't take it personally, extract the essence. And I said, know your story. Find it. Find it in a movie, find it in a fairy tale, find it in a book, find it in a mythology. Know your story. Have a reading, know your story so you understand what subconsciously you're living out. There's nothing new. You just created it your way with your people and your friends in your city and your county. This idea that we're so original, nothing's freaking original. No new stories, hashtag. Those will big ones. Hashtag do it differently, hashtag no new stories.
At this point.
Right, let's get shirts.
Uniform.
Let's get shirts, right? Those are like the theory. 48 to 52, that's my third hashtag, 48 to 52. The 4th chakra. So I was wondering about this one because the 4th chakra, I told you, is this idea of unconditional love, agape love, love thy neighbor, but you forgot yourself at the 0, okay, or at the 100. The 100, you totally forgot yourself. At the 0, you're the Scrooge. You love nobody. You have no empathy for absolutely anybody, okay? I chose Hercules. Hades is kind of that way. And funny in mythology, Hades or Pluto doesn't really like people dying. He doesn't really like anyone in the underworld. It's like, leave me alone. I don't want to be bothered. I hate people. So people that hate people, 4th chakra. And then those that love the people, so divine, everyone is love and light. Give me a freaking break. No, it's not. So what I found was Meg. Meg was Hercules in the Disney. I was debating between Phil and Meg. I'll share both. Meg was his love interest in the Disney version, okay? Meg actually worked for Hades. She had a very dark presence. If you see her, she's very dark. She was a spy. And so love is dangerous. Unconditional love is dangerous. You're very vulnerable. At one point, she does go over to Hercules' side because she loves him, but she started out in the dark. So this idea that unconditional, which I don't, you know that I don't believe in unconditional love in this plane, is really, you know, in this story, I think played out well. Another thing I saw with Hercules is he kept doing all of these Hercules labors for the people. That's a little bit of validation, but for the people, for the people. So Phil could have a hero. It was about the other. And he didn't think about himself until he went out with Meg and took a chance, even though Phil was like, don't do that. She's evil. So you have to take chances in love. You can't close out, but you can't all be all vulnerable all the time. And the reason I thought Phil might be a good midpoint was because he's centaur. So he's a half human and half animal. And so the animal love, the eros love, and then the agape love of the divine. So I thought that might be. So you could pick and choose either one. I felt more drawn to Meg for that because it was a love interest. So knowing, so people, I had a client the other day, Frances, I love her. Frances, she was the love of my life. Frances, she's my soulmate. No, that's an addiction. And funny enough, no surprise, he had a gambling addiction prior. So it's the same part of the brain. Go back to gamble because she is just an addiction. So people that are enmeshed, people that are codependent, people that have no sense of self, people that talk about their kids and their lover and their husband, their family, the Al-Anon sort of archetype is a 4th chakra, 100 or 0, depending on which side of the coin you put it. And of course, the Scrooge archetype that closes off and is hardened. At the end of the story, he gives some of his money to family, but obviously he keeps some of it for himself. But I thought Meg was a good midpoint. 5th chakra, this was pretty obvious, but then my daughter pointed out something, so I thought that was fair to mention. Ariel, she loses her voice. The 5th chakra is the voice, okay? So you can't be very mousy and never talk, and you can't be like me and yell all frickin' day. 5th chakra issue much? Yes, okay? So Ariel loses her voice and Ursula steals her voice. So I thought Sebastian was a good midpoint, a good 48 to 52, because Sebastian's negative. Oh my God, what are you doing? And he's always bitching and moaning and complaining. So his voice is a little bit in the middle, but he's loyal. He does what she wants. He's there with her. So he meets her in the middle and is trying to help her, you know, be sexy on the boat, try to get him to notice you. So he's aiding her in trying to what's it called? To get the love from Eric. Now, I want you to hear what I just said. He's aiding her. Joseph Campbell, and we know this from astrology, but Joseph Campbell, when he described the monomyth and all the stages of the hero's journey, there is a point that you need a teacher, you need a mentor, you need a guide, you need a fairy godmother, you need a Sebastian. We all need someone. This idea, I'm so independent, I do it all myself, that's such bullshit. I think I told you the story when I taught that class and the girl was crying, I miss my mommy. Like, yeah, she was like 50 years old and she starts crying, right? Because she realized, did you feed yourself? Did you put your diaper? I mean, someone helped you somewhere, people. Don't, you know, and that's why on the day of my PhD defense, I saw that hand and I called every single person who let me get there. Now, your teacher, as I am to you, as other people have been and will be in your life, are temporary. Okay, that's a super important spiritual lesson. Your teachers, your gurus, your mentors, your guides are temporary. You can always go back home, as are your parents. Your parents are your first teachers, good or bad, they are. That's temporary. You're not supposed to be with your parents until the day they die and the day you die. That's sick. Enmeshment, fourth chakra. You haven't grown up, first chakra. So you see how I'm piecing it together? So that's symbolic in why the help.
A lot of pieces.
Because people have more than one thread, usually a couple. That's where you see in astrology the oppositions and the squares. You're going to see it immediately. Next week, I'm going to teach you how to do the elements in the chart. So from just a minute of looking at the chart, you're going to go, oh, they have too much fire, too little earth, and you're going to put this together with that. That'll be another tool. So I found Sebastian. Now, my daughter said Jasmine, especially in the new motion picture one. She's very verbal and vocal, and I don't want to marry some king, and I want to pick my prince, and blah, blah, blah. So she had the over excess of vocab, of voice, of being vocal. And then I just, as a flip side, put Jafar, because he's just the evil. And then I thought the genie was an interesting midpoint, because the genie represents freedom, but not freedom, because he's limited by the curse of being in the lamp, which is the end of the story that Aladdin frees him. That's symbolic of the seventh chakra when we technically leave our body, but that's another class. Okay, but I thought the voice aspect was an interesting one, so I just brought it. The sixth chakra. I told you the other day that the sixth chakra is your God. What are your thoughts consumed with? In Hindu philosophy, there's something called the Ishvadevatar, which is the god of your choice. So Hindus, they believe in Kali. In Greek mythology, Hellenistic people might have a throne or a temple to Athena. So you have a god of choice, Buddha, Krishna, Jesus, money, power, sex, whatever it is, your children. That is your religion, okay? Your thoughts are consumed with your God. If it's worry, if it's anxiety, if you're not pretty enough, if you're fat, if you're skinny, if your boyfriend doesn't love you, that's your God. Those are your thoughts. This Ishvadevatar says that your God has a form. In Mulan, her God, first of all, was her father, but more importantly was the patriotism of the country. This is not uncommon. Sixth chakra people have this universality sometimes, or communism or socialism or capitalism, or very politically oriented. There's like this sort of bigger God in them than even themselves. They might have a third chakra issue with their sort of inner divine spark, but sixth chakra, what are you thinking and consumed with? Look at someone's Facebook page. That'll tell you their God in a minute, or their Instagram feed. It's very easy to know what someone's God is. If they're constant,
They're posting a million times.
I mean, there's age-appropriate stuff. Developmentally, it's appropriate for teenagers to take selfies. Let's get real. But if you're 45, I don't know, you gotta look and see. So you can sneak on someone's Facebook picture and know what their God is. In Mulan's case, it was her country. She wanted to also save her father so he wouldn't die. So she pretended to be male. Shinyu was the mean guy in charge of the Huns. He was the masculine aspect, really rough and killed people and beheaded people. She was obviously the feminine. And mind you that the fairy tale, the queen, I mean the princess, let's say, or Aladdin, the prince, is symbolic of the 48 to 52, just not at the beginning. And that's your job, to start raw material and grow into the sun, the mist mark, wherever it is here that I did the other day. So the earth is symbolic of this, and this is the sun. In your chart, the earth and the sun are always opposite because you are born into the earth. You're going through life repeating your cycles and patterns to achieve your sun sign. I was born in Virgo, and I've been making my way in the past 48 years to get to Pisces. So whatever your sign is, find out your opposite. Yours is Aries. What sign are you? Aries. Yours is Libra. So here we have, not coincidentally, Aries Libra in the classroom, because that's the way it works. And that sign or opposite sign will be in your life, and that's considered a karmic sign. Because that person's supposed to show you how to be the earth or how to be the sun that you are not. The symbol of the earth is the circle with the cross. I told you on Tuesday that that's this. There's a tarot card. It's the only tarot card that turned upside down is better than when it's directed, because it's an exchange in values. These people need to have a change in values. There's a value system, AKA from childhood, your subconscious programming, my entire theory upon theory upon theory starts here. That's why I said most people have first, second chakra issues. Most people have 1, 2, and 3 or lower nature issues. Because like Joy said the other day, oh, how sad we missed the mark. And I was like, why? None of us are God. None of us are supposed to be God. There's a thing in New Age, I'm God, I'm the version of God. No. You have a little divine ass spark of God, girlfriend. Get real. You are not God, okay? You are so layered in humanness and sin and fault and flaw, which is fine. Own it. That's the dark side. That's what we want, but we've been conditioned with the deadly sins that you're bad and you're bad and you're bad. If you have this, then that's why people live in the 0 to the 100. Some people say, fuck it. My parents are addicts, fuck it. I'm gonna destroy my life. They're owning their dark, but then they don't own their light. Most of us, though, in normal society, own our light and don't want to have our dark. And the truth is you have to own both. That's the whole point of this. Okay? So Mushu, I thought, was the midpoint. I thought Mushu was the midpoint because, first of all, the 6th chakra, and this is very, very important. In my work, I deal a lot with ancestral trauma. Trauma that isn't the client, but they're dragging from generations. And all of us are dragging our parents' crap because it's the mind. Remember, the 6th chakra, the mind, that we inherited at birth. The 1st chakra is also, all of these are obviously the mind because there's a metaphysical principle called all is mind. But the 6th chakra specifically has to do with where you fell short, what your parents told you, which in turn was their crap. But that comes from lineage upon lineage upon lineage, okay? So a lot of that is ancestral. And Mushu was the ancestor. He was small, but he wanted to be big. And he wanted to be the guardian. So it was like, your thought, there's this one, he's my absolute favorite, Ishvadevata, which is Hanuman. Hanuman is the monkey god. I've told you guys I meditate to him every morning religiously. And what I love about him, and I write about him in my book, is in the story he inflates and he deflates. He looks almost what I call the Thanksgiving Day parade balloon, like a monkey. In the story, in the story of the Mahabharata, which is this big epic tale in India, he's the monkey god, and he protects Rama and Sita, who are like the king and queen, so to speak. And that's exactly our thoughts. Our thoughts can get way too big, 100, and own us and destroy us, or you can shrink them down. Yes, that issue is there. I don't believe that the wound ever fully goes away, but it could scar. So when you scar it and you kind of, transmute it, then it doesn't own you, but it's always there. Of course, part of your story. And then you shrink that. And I call that Hanuman mind, which I didn't know was a term until I went to India. And the astrologer was this little 4-foot guy, didn't speak much English, but he's like, you astrologer, Hanuman mind, like 2 things that I am. And I was like, oh my God, like it's real, because that's like my thing is the Hanuman. Because I think I have the ability to manipulate my thoughts, to be very self-destructive, but also to shrink them so that spirit, for instance, in my work can come through. So we all have that ability. And there's a scene where Mushu is tiny, but they light the light and he looks huge. I'm the ancestor. So that I thought was really symbolic, okay? This also has a lot to do with the masculine-feminine principle, because she's obviously feminine warrior, and I forget his name, Ling Hu, I think was the lover, was the masculine warrior, and they end up getting married. And the emperor acknowledges that she's the combo, okay? So 148 to 52. Going back, because I don't know if I finished that thought briefly, the prince or the princess is raw material to become the god. You have every single thing already inside of you. That's what the chart shows me in a client, the potential to be what you are supposed to become. The earth is limited in its resources, meaning you are limited. You can't do anything in the world. You're not going to be an NBA player. Let's get real. You don't have the right gender, so let's start with that. And you're not tall enough to be in the WNBA. And you don't even like basketball. So there's a limitation, okay? So you're born limited. And what I love about the Hindu philosophy is they say you have the divine spark in the 3rd chakra, in the fire element, and we do. But they also say we have something called koshas. Koshas are like coverings. And it's like we have a knowledge kosha, we have a food kosha, we have a blissful kosha. We've got a lot of layers of crap and a little divine spark. You're more earth than you are, I don't want to say spirit, but because I try to believe that we're in that middle ground, but we are more dense in this lifetime. We are more earth bound. And I like how they describe that. Yes, your divine spark is there, or your Atman, your soul, but you're covered and covered and covered with 5 koshas compared to 1 little spark. So we have to put it into proportion that you're not here with unlimited possibilities. The wheel, the chart, tells me all of your potential. It also tells me what you're never going to achieve. I don't have to look at Sam and know she's not going to be an NBA player, obviously. So we have to accept that we have a limit and be okay with that. But whatever your soul truly does come to do, you already have all the potential. And that's the symbolism of the fairy tale. The queen or the prince or the princess always grows in to their potential. But it's the hero's journey. They need a teacher. They need a challenge. They have to leave home. Blah, blah, blah. You know the whole story. Okay. Any questions on how I got these fairy tales and how you can use this in practice? I put 7 as transcendence, the happily ever after, because all the stories end with happily ever after. But guess what? After the royal wedding, drop right back down, and the reality, I got to wash the dishes, I got to clean your underwear, I got to pay the bills. Get over it, people. I had a client the other day, oh, the fairy tale. I was like, come on, girl. You got 5 kids and you're 30-something years old. Really? Really? Come on now. Like Joy said, grow up and then we'll talk. I mean, sometimes you gotta like grow the client up real fast. So everyone understand this? Okay. The symbol of the earth is very important. Anytime you see a cross, a circle with a cross, or a square, it is related to the earth element. It is related to a limitation. That's why Jesus was crucified. And I told you that he was an astrologer. Not only was his birth, kind of notified by the star, which is the ability of getting Christ consciousness, of becoming that for you does not mean perfection. Please do not misunderstand that. Christ and Buddha consciousness for you as a human being does not mean perfection. It means taking your wheel, your chart, whatever you want to call it, your potential, we are in positive psychology, and bringing it to its full expression. Working your whole chart, all your archetypes, all your psychological organs, whatever language you like, all your planets at its highest consciousness. This does not mean that you can transcend the form. You do not transcend the form until death. Everyone clear on that? You have your potential, and you have your potential. And you have the ability to express that potential to its highest consciousness level in this lifetime with a limitation of the matter. And that is why Jesus was crucified on a cross, because his body, like yours and all of yours, limits you. Please understand that distinction. And I told you the other day, my disclaimer about for those of you who are Christian in the class, I love Jesus. Where's my little Jesus picture right here? Love my guy. But he too was limited by the flesh in the lifetime, like Buddha. And what did Buddha say? Oh, I better eat the rice. He needed to bring in the earth element, the body, the limitation that he had to feed himself. So the symbolism of the cross, the 3 crosses I told you are 3 crosses in astrology. They've also been linked to the Ida, Pingala, and the Sushumna, which is the spinal column in the energy body. Okay, and we'll talk more about that symbol tonight if you've joined the spiritual lecture, and where we get all of our teachings from and how important that symbol is. Okay, any questions on this? Okay. Can you guys see the board over there? The needs, unmet needs? I think everyone can see it. You guys can see that, right? Okay, so as you guys know, let me find my poster. I believe that we all have 4 unmet needs. Safety and security, protection, validation, and love. Okay? I think that everyone pretty much is lacking in most of them, but there's going to be one that's pretty primary. So if you want to use the unmet need language instead of the chakra language or the element language, I'm just going to tell you the same thing in the unmet needs. So I broke it down to the 4 chakras, okay? I have safety and security needs. These people need earth, they need grounding. I call this the sheep or the wolf in the 0 to 100, okay? Life is a battle. This is stuff you're going to hear people say. Fight or flight. My adrenaline is flowing, or I have no adrenaline. The flip side of the sheep is that they're weak. The adrenals are going to be an issue. These people are fighting a problem of limits versus freedom. Freedom, I need freedom, I need freedom. Why, if you go back to the original belief that they had to grow up too fast, they had too much authority, and they need to be free. Or if you went like me to the innocent, you had too much freedom, so to speak. I didn't really, and I need authority, I need rules, I need some structure. I had no structure in my family. I didn't have a lot of freedom though, but you'll find those themes, okay? The organ that is usually most affected are the adrenals. So they'll have adrenal fatigue, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome. These are very typical illnesses that are linked to those. And I have the sheep and the wolf. The wolf attacks, the sheep retreats. That's the 0 to 100. Your job is to take the midpoint. The second chakra, I put helicopter parent versus latchkey kid parent, kid, because the need is protection. They need a feeling of love. Again, if you go back to the mother missing, the mother not growing up, or the mother being water. Too much, it's water element, yeah. If the mother, is too much of a woman, or in these fairy tales, every single fairy tale has a parent that's dead, or in Aladdin, he's an orphan. That's not an accident. A parent is castrated. You kicked that parent out when you adopted the values of the covert or the overt power, which we talked about with the wrong alliance. It's the same reason they kicked the parent out of the fairy tale. Cinderella, her father's alive, but he's gone. Okay?
Self-retention? What is it?
Self-referential, I'll get there. So protection, people that need a mother. So I used to say, there's a little kid's book, are you my mother? Are you my mother? Are you my mother? That was my life story. Are you my mother? I went to everybody and acted like a little kid and wanted them to be my mother. Then I met Miss Rapace, who like finally met my needs while I was having cancer, learned to mother myself, and she's my Virgo, so talk about Earth and
Still your mom.
And she is, of course, she's the symbolic mother, but I integrated her. She was the mother that represented the mother that I needed that I never got. So you're going to hear this theme a lot with people. And again, this is not only mother, and this is not only women. I see it primarily, but men have too. Helicopter parents hover, 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 don't let the kid leave home, and they need to force through. They need to, and this is a very important word I'm going to tell you, penetrate life. Kids that have helicopter parents are not allowed to penetrate life. This resolves in erectile dysfunction, in inability to keep a freaking erection, people. Okay, they're not allowed to own their masculine principle. Women too. You play it safe. You sit on the sidelines. You always watch. You stay below the radar. Those people that want to be the good person and below the radar, they can't get an erection. They're lymphatic energy, what I call. They're weaklings because the parents never let them grow up. There's this scene in Fred Claus, the movie, of course, another Christmas reference because you see my innocence there, right? It never goes away, even though I'm an adult now. It's never going away because that's my wound. Carolyn Mays calls that woundology. We speak from our wound. And it's Vince Vaughn, which I think is so funny. The creators were very clever. He is Santa Claus's brother. Imagine being Santa Claus's brother. Hello, you're going to be overshadowed. You will see this if somebody, I told you earlier, the parent won't let the daughter be beautiful. The mother wants to shine like my mother. Same thing happens with the father. And with a daughter father and a mother son. It's not only one way. They never let them dethrone the parent. They never let them assume the kingdom. They always stay a prince, like Prince Charles never became king. He has second, obviously, mommy issues, second chakra shit going on all the time. And doesn't he kind of look lymphatic energy? He just kind of has that vibe, right? I don't know. I don't like him. So in the movie, Vince Vaughn, who funny enough is so huge. So it's the oxymoron of the shrunken child, but yet they made him play a big guy, which is funny. In my symbolic memory, I think that's funny. Anyway, and Kevin Spacey. And Kevin Spacey says a story about how the tree, the big tree overshadows the little tree. And this happens in families. A brother overcasts another brother or sister, sibling rivalry. A parent overcasts the other parent. There's an imbalance of power. What was I going to say? A parent overcasts a shadow on the child never grows into themselves. Helicopter parents do this. So these children never grow into their own. If you don't grow into your own, you can't fight for life. You can't penetrate. I'm using that word on purpose. You cannot penetrate life. Penetration is the act of the sword. It's the act of the penis. This has nothing to do with the physical penis. It has to do with the energy of Mars, of the masculine principle. And I told you in the other lecture last class that you shatter the snow globe with your partner, which is the fantasy, with the Mars energy, that in a low vibration is conflict, but in a high vibration I have here is creator energy. Those parents don't let their child create themselves. Those kids more than anybody need to leave home. That would be my first recommendation. Pick up your bags and leave home. Does not mean not to talk to your parents, but you got to set boundaries and you've got to figure out how to be an adult. because your parents aren't let you. And I bet you that man specifically, the woman too, and I had a client the other day I'll share, will not penetrate the woman. Or if they're gay, they might choose to be the one that's the bottom rather than the top. There's symbolism in that. I'm not saying it's 100% all the time, but there's usually a theme there. For women, and I had a client the other day who couldn't get penetrated by her partner. She had a lot of pain. And there is pain in sex oftentimes. It's because they are not allowed to be penetrated. Same idea. The male energy of going into life, making it, paying their own bills, having ambition, creating. This could directly relate to not being able to have children because they don't let the masculine energy, the seed, penetrate. Remember, I'm talking physical, but I'm also talking symbolic. Are you guys understanding that? It's super important you understand that, okay? These are money issues, sex issues, breast, cervix, prostate issues. I said they can't penetrate life. They play it safe. They sit on the sidelines. They want to be the good, fly under the radar. Those are words that people use. Mr. Nice Guy falls into this. Emotional, hyper freaking emotional, like me, super sentimental. I used to be super freaking sentimental and very self-referential. Self-referential is like egocentric. At 2 years old, we know in psychology, the child becomes saying, me, mine, mine, mine. We know this in terms of developmental psych. In astrology, Mars goes around the zodiac at 2 years old. It's the terrible twos. You want your kid at the terrible twos to own that, but you want to give it a boundary. So the best thing to do for your kid at 2 is to say, okay, which outfit do you want? The blue one or the pink one? The red one or the green one? You're letting them choose and penetrate life, but you're not letting them overrule the show. So self-referential people are constantly talking about themselves and themselves and themselves. And everyone loves to talk about themselves, don't get me wrong. But people that are ultra self-referential have never left that second chakra and have never healed that. They stayed in the egocentric in the 2-year-old phase, okay? The third chakra, I have overpowering to humble. This is my issue, why I named it my Aladdin and my Jafar. My Jafar gets very big and I'm an egomaniac. I got to check that shit. I mean, I do. And I can go to the extreme of being non-existent. There's I don't know if you guys listened to the podcast that I was on, but I've done this activity with some of you before where I've said, do you want to, when you breathe, when you do a yogic breath, when you breathe out on the inhale or on the exhale, when you breathe completely, you let all of it out, which one do you like better? People like the inhale usually have a healthy third chakra or they go overboard. But they usually know how to balance it. People that like the exhale don't like to take up space. They shrink. They have shrinking violet syndrome, and they don't like to take up any space. That's the Aladdin part, the humble, the poor, the impoverished, or the overpowering Jafar that wants all of it so much so that he becomes a genie and locks himself into the lamp. Validation is the unmet need. So safety, security needs, protection needs, validation. And in the fourth, we see, IBS, digestion issues, autoimmune issues. Autoimmune could be third or fourth. Because autoimmune issues is lack of self-love, and it's also beating yourself up that you're a piece of shit, you're worthless. Literally, it's like taking a bag of rocks and just hitting yourself. The body is attacking itself. So it could be a third, fourth chakra issue.
You know how much I'm putting together. Like,
well, that's why I'm doing this for you, so you understand how to do this, okay? Fourth chakra is love needs, okay? These people, like I said before, can be supremely Scrooge. They got hurt so badly when they were vulnerable, they shut down completely, or they're just so codependent, they're all about giving it. I struggle with this a bit, even though I'm a little selfish, self in my language. And I do sort of balance the third, fourth, but I do have a tendency. My second marriage was extremely, I wouldn't say codependent because I don't consider myself codependent, but it was very fantasy. It was very snow globy. And so that's very unrealistic. Self-destructive love. So did I tell you about the guy I had the other day? She's my soulmate. Oh my God, the addiction. And I said, you are an addict. It's the same part of the brain. Codependent, self-destructive love.
Gambler, right?
He was a gambler. Same part of the brain, people.
Did he stop becoming a gambler?
Yes,
The addiction
yes, with her. He just substitutes addiction. Anyone who knows addiction, we substitute our
Maybe
addiction.
not attend one AA meeting, you drop one, you're gonna
Right,
hold on to another.
right. So that's the part of the brain, and we studied that when we did addictions a few months ago, that idea. I'm not saying that the soulmate doesn't exist. If you believe it, great. My idea is the thread mate, which I've shared with you before, is a bit more balanced. And I'm not also a believer that you're supposed to have this fairy tale love. Oh my God, maybe at the beginning, like Sternberg says, the passion, but once intimacy and commitment kick in, it becomes more the bills, the kids, the thread developing. And then you have to work to get the passion. If you're all passion, you're in the second chakra, definitely because of the sex, but you're also working some codependent issues there in the fourth. So he was not willing to accept that this woman wasn't coming back, and the descriptive language was so codependent.
What did he get addicted to after?
Well, he's still in love with her. He can't get over her. That's why he came for the session. He wanted to know if she's coming back. Recent. Yeah, it just happened in Christmas.
Wow.
So he's still grappling with that. And so Andrew Solomon, I told you guys, wrote a book called Noonday Demon, all about depression, and he says that depression is the flaw in love. And I told you this before, I believe it's self-destruction in love. When you see someone like I was on my way to self-destruction with this person. If I would have stayed with him, I lost all sense of self. Francis, non-existent. So you really have to check that. That is not love, people. That is not love. That is self-destruction. And it's ego, and it's control, and it's jealousy, and it's possession. People that possess other people are fourth chakra people. They're also second chakra people, but they're fourth chakra. I want to possess you as ownership. Okay, people are not to be utilized for your purpose. That's the Al-Anon. I feel better taking care of you. That is selfish, not self. I don't believe in selfless. People would call that selfless. Any questions on the unmet needs, the chakras, the illnesses, our nervous system issues, and heart issues? Okay. I just was in a segue. Okay. The victim, rescuer, perpetrator. So it's not my model. They call it, I don't remember the guy's name, Weinholt or something. It's a couple or two people that wrote this book, How to Free Yourself from Drama, Triangle Consciousness, something like that. Great little book. Highly recommend it if you're going to work with couples. I, however, use the word perpetrator instead of persecutor. They use the word persecutor. So you'll see me in my videos, I talk about the perpetrator. So the perpetrator, because in the myth of Demeter and Persephone and Hades, Demeter is the rescuer. She's the mom trying to rescue Persephone from the underworld. Pluto is obviously, or Hades, the perpetrator, and Persephone is the victim. But we learned in this class that isn't true. What did we learn? We learned that the rape of Persephone takes you to your adult self, and you need to get raped in one way or another. That means people that have physically been raped are Snow White, and people that have never left home or haven't grown up and haven't experienced a rape, symbolic, please, don't leave home and stay innocent. So in the myth of Demeter, Persephone, and Hades, supposedly Persephone was the victim. I say bullshit. Let's turn this around. Now, in the wrong alliance, in the relationship model, your parents, there was a victim and there was a perpetrator. I wrote this somewhere. I don't see it. Here. And the rescuer is how you rescue yourself. So I'm just going to quickly, For those of you who don't know the myth of Persephone, Demeter, and Pluto, Demeter was the mother, Persephone was the daughter, and mom gave the daughter narcissus flowers, innocence, to stay home, to stay child. Okay? Pluto saw an opening, the crack in the egg, that every system has, the snow globe or the relationship snow globe, whatever your family of origin snow globe. He pulls Persephone into the underworld. He appears to be the perpetrator, right? And the rescuer is mom, Demeter. Oh my God, I have to rescue my daughter from this evil person, this evil man that took my daughter. That's how we play out stories. Usually you're the victim. Someone did something to you. And you want, primarily, in my case, I wanted a mother to come rescue me. A lot of women, like the girl I had the other day, wants a fairy tale knight in shining armor to come rescue her. We learned in the Wrong Alliance triangle that the mistress appears to be the perpetrator, right? It appears as if the mistress is the perpetrator. She took my husband, right? Bullshit. I also told you that the mistress is the answer to you and your spouse's relationship problem. In your triangle, your perpetrator, in my case, was my mother. I didn't want her, right? She perpetrated my beautiful little, system with me and my dad, and every one of you has your wrong alliance, so mom is the perpetrator in your story. Bullshit. Integrating that parent is what rescued you. So I'm turning it around. Victim, perpetrator, how to rescue self. So you could do 0 to 100, 48 to 52. You can do fairytale, you could do chakra, you can do unmet needs. I don't care what language you use. But I like this better. There is nobody coming to rescue you people. There's no knight in shining armor. There ain't no lottery. Bullshit. You create that as a temporary means of unifying the psyche. It is known that people that win the lottery within 5 years are friggin' broke because they never learned money managing habits. Their scarcity mentality was never fixed. The triangle and the chakra, the reframing of the thoughts, the god of poverty never changed. Knight in shining armor, read Rejected Princesses. Read what happens after the honeymoon, or at the honeymoon if he's limp dick or she doesn't want to get penetrated. That we don't hear about. The story ends here. No one ever told you that you got to do it over and over and over and over again. And you wonder why your cycles are the same and the same people with a different face show up in your life. The same problems at work, the same relationship. This isn't freaking rocket science. You haven't freaking integrated the lesson. You haven't shifted the place of consciousness in which you created the problem, and it's showing up for you to work on. So that rescuer is you. This is super, super important. Why? Agape love and unconditional love that I say doesn't exist only comes from you to you. I don't agree that another person can love you unconditionally because I know that we're limited by matter. And I know that the fourth chakra is in the divine. That's what informs my theory. But you, with the divine spark and your matter, can love yourself. You have to rescue you. Be your knight in shining armor, be your lottery ticket, be your pageant, be your fairy godmother, be your ancestor, be whatever the hell you need to be to make yourself whole. Stop waiting for someone else. Your Heros Gamos must come first before you have the mystical marriage with another. Is it all making sense? It's all the same thing. I'm just saying it in different language so that you can pick the one you like. Right? So the perpetrator is the mistress. The perpetrator could be God. Oh, I'm so godly. I never entered the material world. That was me. Please. My God was spirit. That's exactly what I needed to get the hell out and put him at the base of the triangle and incorporate and rescue myself with the matter which I was rejecting. What you reject is exactly what you need. That's what's going to rescue you. That's your mistress. And your chakra or your unmet need is going to tell you. So someone wants to tell me that they love unconditional and all agape love, bullshit. I'm going to go, tell me how you love yourself unconditionally. I don't want to hear about Peter, Paul, and Mary. What? And those people cannot speak about self. They're constantly speaking about the other. Oh, what I do for the other, or Jesus, or this, or that. They speak from that. Like the text I got, that she didn't even say her name.
Mm-hmm.
Blatantly third, fourth chakra issues. There's no self, or there's too much self, or the friend matters more than her. So you see the, and like I said, most of these work together. Okay, I just want to make sure that I covered everything on the board. Did I?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any questions? I think we're right about out of time. Any questions about what we covered? Okay, we have a few minutes, so I want to kind of just chime in. If you have your chart with you, then you could do this activity. If not, I will go one by one next week when we start astrology. But for those of you who are not going to come to astrology, I don't want you to miss out on this. If you go to your chart, every planet, every archetype has a sign. The sign, you could Google this. I'm not going to tell you this, but I'll give you the information and then you could figure it out. Every sign is going to be, every planet's going to be in a sign. Let's say it's in Leo, that's fire. If it's in Cancer, that's water. If it's in Gemini, that's air. If it's Capricorn, that's earth. You're going to count up, and the little app will tell you how many you have in Capricorn, Virgo, Taurus. Those are the earth signs. Gemini, Libra, Aquarius are the air signs. Aries, Leo, Sagittarius are the fire signs. Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces are the water signs. So I just gave you all 12.
Kind of hard to see.
It's a color. On my app, it has a little color. Royal blue, I don't have that app, but it might be the same thing. Red is obviously fire. Aqua is air. Royal blue is water. And brown is earth. If you've got the app with the little colors. If not, you could Google what element is Cancer, what element is Leo. You could do that little search. It's only 10 planets.
Astrolab has like it written down at the bottom.
Yeah, I think that most of them give you a little grid. What you're going to do, and for those of you who are going to take the astrology, I'm going to teach you this and we're going to go into more depth about what that means about you, but I want you to, for those of you who are not coming, to have that. Add up your fire, add up your air, add up your water, and add up your earth. You're going to have a balance. Just take a guess how much you think I have. What elements do you think I have the most of? Just from my personality. Think I have, what?
Color-wise?
No, do you think I have a lot of fire, air, earth, or water?
You said earth, right?
No, I don't have a lot of earth. Have you met me?
Grounding.
When the hell have I ever been
Exactly.
grounded?
That's what we were just talking about.
No, I have learned.
Yeah.
It's something I had to teach myself and
It's not current,
attract.
it's-
No, your chart never changes. That's why I said you're always, if you come with a problem or a theme in your life, an opposition or a square,
Unless it shifts, right?
you cannot shift it 100%. You will never, ever be in 48 to
Oh,
52
okay.
forever. It's a constant struggle or not struggle. Remind me to tell you the difference between pain and suffering. I think I put that on the board. I wanted to tell you that. I'm going to tell you that in a minute. So I have a lot of fire and water. I'm very fiery. Anyone who knows me is I'm very fiery, but I'm also extremely emotional. That's why I work so much in the subconscious. The element I'm lacking is earth. I only have one in earth. So I have to work my life.
Green?
What?
Green for earth?
No, it's brown on mine. I have to bring in the earth element, meaning I have to ground myself. One of my favorite practices are my shamanic practices, which are earth-based. I have to be in nature. I have to have an animal. I have to like plants. I'm not going to want to do these things. That's part of the problem. I have to eat grounding foods. I eat beets and sweat potatoes every day because they are rooted vegetables or grounding. I attracted a partner that's 6 planets in Taurus, which is earth. You need to make up for the missed elements. That's part of what you can help with strategies with your client. They have too much fire and no water, then you bring in the water element. The person is going to speak from the element they have a lot of and or the one they're actually missing. So I had a client the other day who had 0 earth. And the person, all she did was talk about money. Of course, because there's a lack, so you overcompensate. Nicole, you lack water. It's hard for you to express them. You might be very logical and rational. I don't know what the other proportion is of the other ones to see. But when you lack an element, you're going to be very much a second chakra person. Maybe your mother was too overbearing or not enough. You're going to struggle with maybe protection needs. So you're going to want the feeling of love and nurturance or not. Maybe you had too much of it. And like when you have sex, you just want sex and you don't want to be touched and cuddled. There's that sort of behavior. Remember, our tendency is to be 0 to the 100. Our job as a therapist and our self-therapist for ourselves using these tools is to bring in the elements. So you need to either the beach or bring in water, have a bowl of water at your house, put it next to your table, drink a lot of water. There's a lot of ways. There's the spirit, there's the matter, there's environmentally in the home, you bring in a missing element. Okay, we're about to go, but I do want to talk to you about pain versus suffering. Super important. I do have a bunch of lectures on this, but I'm going to give the 2-second nutshell because it's in relationship to this. Every single one of you is limited. That's the symbol of the circle with the cross. That is why Jesus died on the cross, to represent limitations, to represent the limitations of the flesh. Okay? We are all limited. We are all original sin. We all miss the mark. Doesn't mean that we don't grow and grow and grow and grow in life circularly, because we're achieving higher consciousness every time the cycle comes around to learn it. However, you have a choice if you want to have pain or you want to suffer. And they are 2 very different things. Pain is inevitable. Buddha said, pain is inevitable, suffering is not. I had a client yesterday, I opened her records and I see there's going to be a death, there's going to be loss, she's going to have a crisis. It was a pretty intense session. And we understood what it was. And I said, look, I cannot take that pain away from you. You as a therapist, you as a child to your parent, although you thought you could, narcissist therapist here, want to take the pain away from somebody. That is not your job. That is an imbalanced 4th chakra. Okay? Something, an overcompensation in yourself that you think it's your fault or you can take the pain away. No one takes the pain of anybody, just like no one heals anybody. People that say they heal, out of whack 4th chakra. Bullshit. No one heals anyone. You heal self and then you emanate that vibration and the people around you heal from that or learn from that if they choose to. Free will. And I said to her, I can't take away this pain. This is what's coming. I see it in the energy. You can see it in the chart, a transit, whatever. You could see someone's about to go to a divorce or lose a baby. You can't take that from them, but you can help them not suffer. There are suffering personalities. Nicole, hate to break it to you, you're one of them, just like me. People that tend to have a lot of water or no water, we tend to love suffering. That can come out, and maybe for Nicole it's different. I love pain. I love to suffer. I've gotten better because I've brought the element of earth in and I have this understanding, and damn, how many more times am I going to get cancer to learn the lesson? Girlfriend learned, okay? Next week I'll be back in the same bullshit, but okay, you're a masochista. She admits it. She's masochist. Of course you are, because you have no water. So water is, not that the others aren't, but water in specific, when you have too much or too little, 2nd chakra people are masochists. We love to suffer. We take our pain and suffering to a whole other dimension. Okay, so I have too much, too little. Because suffering becomes your God. And this is not an accident. We were all born in the age of Pisces. And we all, whether you're Judeo-Christian or atheist or whatever, you saw the image of Christ crucified on a fucking cross, and that is engraved in your collective unconscious. So to be Christ-like, you must suffer and be nailed to the cross and pinned and hurt out of thorns. I love it. I fucking love that shit. I make love to my problems like nobody's business. Now I'm having a moment of clarity. I'm at the transcendence for about half a fucking day, and then I'll be right back to the beginning. And Nicole owned it, which is what we need. We need to own our shit. So Nicole is going to attract people and friends and lovers that might be hedonists, that want pleasure all the time. Pleasure, pleasure, pleasure. Because 0 to 100 in the psyche is hedonism or pleasure. And I have a whole video series on pleasure and pain. Are you a pain seeker or a pleasure seeker? Do you love your suffering, or do you try to pretend and you're happy? Those people that are happy all the time, oh, I'm so happy, I'm so happy. Oh my God, drives me fucking crazy. I have a client like that. Shows up at my house the other day. Her mother has a fucking heart attack. The next day she shows up with cookies. Are you fucking crazy? Right there, so dysfunctional. But the psyche doesn't know, because the psyche is stuck in child other than the 0 to 100. The psyche thinks your only choices are Aladdin or Jafar. I shouldn't even say Aladdin or Jafar, Snow White or the Wicked Witch. One extreme or the other, super innocent or super wicked.
Their child's literally there, and that's just not.
I personally think that the manifestation of DID is that in shamanism we would call that like a soul fragmentation, and they need soul retrievals, many of them. The psyche split into many parts. Most of us just have the psyche split into two. The law of duality.
And what if you don't remember?
Well, that's part of the therapist's job. Whether you do regressions, hypnosis, therapy is to help you. One of the best movies is The 3 Faces of Eve. It's like a super classic, black and white, really good. It was Eve Black was her dark side. Eve White was her light, so talk about Snow White and Wicked Witch. And Jane was her 48 to 52. So with this person you're specifically talking about has 9 personalities. It's a show. What's it called? The Many Faces of Jane. It's on Hulu. So if you're into like dissociative disorder, we'll cover that in Abnormal Psych.
So
that's definitely a very exaggerated form of everything we've talked about. Most of us are quote unquote whole, but we're living out one polarity, the 0, the 100, the male, the female.
Like there's a lot of like symbolism in there. A lot of sentences that I've heard you say, I've heard therapists say.
Okay, good.
Like the unconditional love, where they were like, sorry, mommy didn't love you enough. Like I've actually heard them say that. And I was like, oh crap, like therapists aren't supposed to say that, but they did.
Yeah, good. See, I'm happy to hear that, because my experience is that most therapists are just.
Don't say that, yeah.
You cannot stop at the empathy and the compassion and creating safe space. You've got to take that leap. You have to. You've got to shatter that snow globe and rip off the Band-Aid at some point once the client develops that rapport. I'm in a very fortunate state. I do get paid to sledgehammer those snow globes. That's why people come. That's why 60, 90 minutes, it's like earth-shattering. But if you don't do the work, you stay at awareness. At the Band-Aid, you stay at awareness with me too. I have all the tools to show you to integrate into it different. That's why I teach. That's why I put the videos. That's why I put the workbook, so that you could do that work and I'll help you. But a lot of times for me, I'm just bringing you to awareness, something that you might take 6 years in a regular therapy or 6 months. But you could still stay at awareness with me too. The client has to decide to integrate and do it differently. But that lacking element is going to show up as the unmet need, the chakra, the illness. So I had the unmet need of protection, the water element overemphasized in 100. Okay, bye Nicole, see you Tuesday. And as a result, I got breast cancer, which is one of the issues. There's many illnesses, and astrologically, every illness has a planet, has a sign. It's just too much to put on the board. So I tidbits. So do that, break that down, air, earth, fire, water, see which one you're either lacking or have too much of. You're always gonna have one or two of most. That's your personality or the language or the unmet need or the 0 to 100 that you're speaking, especially if you have too much or too little. Sometimes someone will have like 3, 3, 2, 2. That person is a little bit more balanced than most, let's say. But usually you'll have like 5, 1, 0, 2 or something like that. It always adds up to 10, by the way. We'll do that in astrology next week. It's just the main planets. We're not doing Chiron or Black Moon or the nodes. So just do the planets from Sun to Pluto. Okay? Any questions before I take attendance? I'm going to stop the recording.